Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So, obligatory disclaimer, I do not promote doing drugs while on medication or doing drugs at all for that matter. This is just me expressing myself and what I learned from my most recent psychedelic trip. I did shrooms last weekend and I saw what I think to be was a manifestation of my BPD. And what that looked like was, think of like cartoonish saber-toothed fangs kind of at your peripheral, and that's what I saw. And I'm going to paint a picture for you, what I was doing during this trip so that you can understand how I came to know that this was a representation of my BPD. I was resting on the couch during the peak of my trip, and my eyes were closed. I was meditating to this band that I'm going to show you right now on the screen. And as I was meditating, I started to get the visuals. They were really tiny triangles, and they were kind of like frosted Christmas lights, if you can imagine that, swirling in circles to the music. And because the melody was just perfect, it kind of set the mood right for me. Sometimes when doing shrooms, it can kind of feel like you're communicating to otherworldly beings or entities. I don't know how to explain why it feels so spiritual. It just feels like they're communicating with you. It's kind of like being in a lucid dream and being able to control that lucid dream. They were telling me that this was me, that this pattern, whatever I'm feeling, whatever I'm getting sucked into right now was me. And then I got these flashbacks of periods in my life where I had started to recover from being suicidal and hurting myself, things like that. They were like showing me images, memories of when I had just started doing yoga. And there was a specific memory where I was kind of just laying down, meditating, and looking up at the ceiling. It was like a really high ceiling, like a canopy, and I think the architecture just made me feel something. Like, I guess I was tapped into mindfulness. And at the time, this was before therapy and DBT and all that, I didn't feel like I could ever be mindful. I was just very on autopilot and angry all the time. So going to yoga showed me that there's another side to me, that I can care about my body, I can care about my mind, my well-being, which was a huge difference from feeling like I had to fight off suicidal ideation every day. It was like I was taking a step towards the right direction, and that was the flashback that I saw. The second flashback that I saw was me when I cut off my toxic friends, toxic partners, and I don't really like to think back on this time because it wasn't fun. As a borderline, I need strong relationships around me to feel like I'm a person, almost, to feel like I have an identity. So during this time, I was really sad and depressed because I didn't have my best friend. We just stopped communicating. I split on her, and yeah, it was just a hard time. I decided not to see the guy that I was seeing at the time, and I realized, fuck, I'm alone. This is the first time that I'm alone. And even if I didn't like it, I learned that I could survive, pretty much. And it forced me to look at myself. So they showed me that, and then they showed me my life now and my day-to-day, what it looks like from the outside. It showed me that, like, well, now you're at this level where you don't have to think about making the right decisions. You just do it every day. You know that you need to journal. You know that you need to vent to someone that you trust. You know when to pull back, when to not lash out, and when you need to be alone. And it just showed me all the things that I do on a day-to-day basis to keep me from losing my shit. And I've been doing this for almost a decade now, so I don't really think about how far I've come, which was kind of sad to me, and I cried during this part of the meditation and the trip because I realized, like, I really don't give myself credit for all that I've done. And I cried, and I kind of turned to my partner and I told him, like, I don't know why I hate myself so much when I've done all these great things for myself. And I just cried, and I went back to meditating and I still saw the visions, but I also saw the teeth. And that's when I knew that they were kind of telling me, like, this is you. You're all of this. This is the light side of you and the darker side of you. And it's not good or bad. It's just who you are. And you need to accept yourself. And I learned in that moment that, like, I could coexist with my disorder or my darker side. I can be this complete picture that I'm seeing right now because it's not a bad picture. It's actually a really beautiful one. And what I felt in that moment was self-acceptance for the first time to that degree. Now, since the trip, I've been reflecting on my relationship with my symptoms and the teeth, so to speak. I know that I'll never have this so-called normal life, and I accept that. I know that the quote-unquote teeth will always be a part of me. I can live with the setbacks. I feel like my disorder is like this wild animal that's been hostile and hounded me for the majority of my life, for decades. Now that I've tamed it, I've learned to be nicer to it, because being nicer to it means being nicer to myself. What I've learned was, if you try to reject what you're feeling when you're dealing with symptoms, if you try to shame yourself out of feeling a certain way and acting a certain way, you're just exacerbating the disorder, and you're going to be experiencing the symptoms that much harder. So by thinking of it as like this pet that is kind of wild, but you can tolerate it if you really try, if you really practice. Just thinking of it as almost like something that you need to take care of and maintain, that's what really helps in the stage of recovery. Just because I say that I'm recovered doesn't mean that I never experience what other borderlines feel. I get so mad at myself when I perceive people judging me, perceive myself not being perfect at something that I'm doing, and it really hurts. Like, I don't hurt myself by cutting anymore, but the shit that I say to myself is just so unhealthy. As soon as I make a mistake, I have this impulse to hurt myself. And like I said, I don't cut myself anymore, but I do get images of it. And that's an indication that I'm not feeling good and that I'm really feeling the shame of messing up on something. And yeah, I believe that I can take my recovery a step further and stop having those thoughts. And I want to really work on it the same way that I worked on not cutting myself anymore. So that's where I'm at. That's what I learned from my trip. I'm going to say this again. I know that psychedelics aren't for everyone, and I'm not saying that you should do them to have like this revelation the same way I did and to recover. I'm just expressing what I experienced, and I think that this is important to put on my channel because I think the message is really positive and could inspire somebody out there who is wanting to recover or trying to maintain their recovery like I am. Feel free to message me on Instagram at your new pen pal, because I want to be pen pals. Pen pals to me means just like checking in on each other, letting each other know that we're thinking about each other, and just being able to vent about our struggles. Send me a comment, send me a message, and I will see you in my next video. Bye. Just testing the audio here and hoping that I don't sound like a douche.